This is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Robert Fisher and Christine Scheffer. And they are the founders of Living Better in Later Years. Both are in the nuclear industry, and from his career in the U.S. Navy as nuclear engineer, Robert currently works with foreign governments on nuclear projects. Christine is a human resources manager to oversee nuclear operations, overseas primarily. Both found their jobs and their lives required both mental and physical health to perform with clarity. They've now shared their knowledge and experience through their website, Living Better in Later Years. So welcome, Robert and Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Over your combined 11 decades, you've experienced many of the lessons that life has to offer. Military service, child and pet rearing, cancer survival, long separations, career interruptions, divorces, and even addiction recovery. So why don't you share some of that experience and what you feel you've learned from it?
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
maybe you'll start. You talked about, I started my career. I'm 6+ decades into a lifetime here. But I started my career in the military, a submarine driver out of the U.S. Naval Academy. And, that is a demanding professional environment and a demanding career. And so you learn a lot early about your ability to survive in a very, very demanding environment. Once I got to the end of my first couple deployments, my first obligation to the Navy, you had the opportunity to attempt to be a good admiral over time, or with 2 children in hand and another one on the way, I decided trying to be a good father was more important to me. So I launched into the civilian nuclear career from there and have had 30+ years in the civilian side of nuclear power. And of course, that's very demanding. And I've done extremely well in a number of organizations in a demanding nuclear career. In the middle of that, I did experience colon cancer at a relatively young age, 35 years of old. And I thought that was interesting from a couple standpoints. First of all, I had been very learned in the leadership area about how you respond or how people respond to significant changes or significant challenges, and the denial, and then the anger and the acceptance. Yet I found when challenged with the colon cancer, I did exactly the opposite. I was quiet for 48 hours, did very little, said very little. And then about 48 hours into it, I got down on my knees, thanked the good Lord for a fantastic life, and said, so be it. Let's get on with putting up the good fight and getting on with my life. And from there, it was just kind of a trajectory upward, doing what's required in cancer, chemotherapy and surgery and those type of things. And, knock on wood, it's been very good since that time. But the other thing that was interesting in that, you'd think going through a colon cancer with 3 young children and whatnot, you'd start to become more sensitive to the work-life balance needs and say, hey, life is short. Oddly enough, I did exactly the opposite. I was like, I haven't done enough as a contribution in my lifetime. And I found myself going from 5th gear in my career to 6th gear into overdrive. And I doubled down on the demands of work and what I needed to do, because darn it, my mom said, make a contribution, and I was going to make a contribution in life. So it was that intensity, that the passion came up, and that drove me through my executive career in the nuclear power industry for a long period of time. And then later, a decade and a half later, shifted into international assignments, which added more fascination to the world of work and the interactions and the leadership challenges, which I thought were interesting. So several key transitions in my career timeframe.
Now, you worked for government, I assume, in the Navy and with nuclear. Have you worked now in the private industry as a consultant, or what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so all my work after the Navy was in civilian organizations, in is different positions in the nuclear operations. And then right now we're in the international community. Christine and I both spent quite a bit of time in the United Arab Emirates, developing the operations. She was employee number 2 for that obligation, and I was chief nuclear officer, preparing for the operation of 4 big nuclear power plants, the first civilian or peaceful pursuits of nuclear power in the Middle East. And we were there, she was there for
15 years.
15 years, myself 7, getting ready for that operation. Since that time, after the departure, we're both in the Egypt, helping the Egyptians do something similar in the up near Cairo.
And in the United Arab Emirates, we were employed by the government of the United Arab Emirates. Now we're working for a contracting company that is supporting the Egyptian government project.
That is interesting. Now, you met on the job in a way?
Yeah, we did.
More than that.
Yeah, we met in the United Arab Emirates. And I did not select him, but I did manage the HR part of hiring him.
And you found out you were both from the same area?
Well, oddly enough, in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates, in Abu Dhabi, we started comparing notes, and we found out that actually we both grew up near Cleveland, Ohio area, in that heard down by Columbus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We grew up, it would have been a 2-hour drive, but between where the two of us each grew up.
So how is it living and working together?
I would say for us, it's great. I don't know that everybody would either seek to work with their spouse or potentially enjoy it, but it's probably because our relationship developed at work and we really liked and respected each other as colleagues. And then, at some point we became interested in being more than colleagues, but it took a while, honestly. So the seed of our relationship was really around work and doing something that we cared about. It helps that we're both really passionate about what we do. And then, of course, when we got stuck together, as many people did during COVID, but I think we had the benefit of already having this sort of 24/7 coexistence. And so, we we were looking at different walls when we were stuck inside with COVID. And, no time in any offices. We were just in a 2-bedroom apartment 24/7.
Yeah, Nana,
were you in Egypt at that point, or were you back in the United States during COVID?
we were in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And if you'd have asked me, Nan, if during that year, almost 15 months, I guess, that I would be stuck in an apartment with another person, 99% of the time within 9 yards of another person, I'd have said that would have been terrifying. But in fact, to be honest with you, it was fantastic. The quality of our relationship, the seamlessness of it, the lack of conflict, I think it's extraordinary. And it really, it shared with me how a relationship could be, and it was really, really quite wonderful. So I had a great COVID. I'll just say that.
But it was a 2-bedroom high-rise. 1 bedroom we slept in. The other bedroom became our gym because there were no gyms at the time, and we had 2 cats. And went outside. There were total lockdowns, curfews. So we saw a lot of each other.
Were there really any differences that you could tell between COVID over there and the lockdown and COVID here in the United States?
Oh, it's dramatically different. First of all, there was no debate about whether there was COVID. There was no discussion about following protocols. It's not a democracy over there. And there are times when not having a democracy makes things run really smoothly. So they had COVID testing up and running. That was the first place that closed schools and, pulled kids home. We couldn't believe it. They locked down the airspace. I almost got stuck outside the country. Thank God at the 11th hour, I made a call not to travel, or I would have been stuck outside the country for possibly up to a year. So they, they make the rules, they clarify the rules, they're completely clear. And there's just, people are allowed to have discussion, but nobody pushes back. And that may sound dogmatic, but I think we were pretty thankful, and the citizens of that country were thankful that they felt like the government was doing what it felt was best to take care of them.
And you probably don't know this, Nan, but in the United Arab Emirates, it's probably the most diverse place on the planet. The citizenry, Arabic citizenry, the Emiratis make up about 15% of the population. And then 85% is expats from all over the world. And we were clearly the minority. But what's fascinating about that, you have all these people, and yet it's by far the safest place I've ever lived. So,
and most secure.
And most secure. So as Christine talked about, even as they talked about these rules and the curfews and whatnot, you didn't see fist fights, you didn't see debates, you didn't see anger.
No.
You had people saying, okay, how do we navigate this collectively, which was kind of rewarding and refreshing from a human being standpoint.
And
yeah,
there was trust that the leadership of the country had its citizens' best interest at heart, because they consistently demonstrate that.
and it was during COVID that you noticed the lack of resources really available promoting, let's say, a positive outlook, and then how to improve the lives, particularly of older people. So you started on another venture. Tell us about this and what you've created.
Well, actually, it was a bit of a two-step. Both of us are kind of get on with it, go take action, and don't play the victim for long. I've played the victim in my life at a period of time, but after about 6 hours of playing the victim, I get really sick of myself, and it's often run and say, okay, I'm going to do something. And after a couple of months in COVID, and it seemed like the whole world just had a reason to be outraged and upset, and just all this angst. And to be honest with you, I really couldn't stand it anymore. I was like, okay. And so then I started asking myself, what are you going to do about it? So we actually started to write, with Christine's help, something called Robert's Roundup. And my whole objective was to pump sunshine, all the good things in life in all these areas. And so it was just a newsletter that went once a month, spent a lot of time on it. I'd hand it over to her. She'd do editing and how about this and how about that. And it was just a positive, with some details and observations and whatnot about why life's great, and stop moping and get on with it. And from there is where, as it went through that and went through the topics, the 12 keys started to evolve.
So let's talk about these 12 keys.
Two more things I would add to that.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle any news. There's a period where I switched off all news. I couldn't handle any of it. So I didn't take feeds. We didn't have actual TV, like a subscription there. So we had no news coming in. And we also had all the ways that we were getting exercise went away. So we were taking 1 to 2 hour daily walks. So no news coming in, long walks. We did a lot of talking about, what actually was giving us some inspiration. Anything that we were hunting or seeking that was interesting, informational, aided in health. We're very interested in diet, nutrition, fitness, sleep, all the things that make people feel better every day. So we'd just be out kind of talking all this stuff over. And that's where all these ideas really started to germinate. Plus we had time on our hands and, felt like doing something that was more interesting than discussing COVID.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these 12 keys that you came up with. These are designed to help people make what? Decisions and influence the behavior?
Exactly. And I'll start with we actually had a product developed some 20 years ago called the Survivor Guide, which was a kind of comprehensive, systematic tool to help people in end-of-life planning, all around everything from wills to estates to pet care to things with the children. You know, that guide you leave behind for those you leave behind. And in a nuclear career, there just wasn't a lot of time to market that and whatnot. So the product kind of laid fallow for a period of time. And Christine knows that every year on my objective sheet of my plan for the year, market the Survivor Guide was on there. And she basically looked at me and said, okay, you get this year to put it on there. And after this, it's going away. So you either do it or or stop talking about it. And from there, we had to realize that, talking about it into life and putting together a plan for that there's a number of reasons that's hard for people to get over. It's an uncomfortable topic. You got to invest time in that kind of planning contingency and heck, it's never going to happen to me. So it's hard, right? It's
hard.
So we started, by virtue of these conversations Christine just talked about, started to put together, said, what's the positive side of this? What's the angle on that? And we really, as we talk more and more, and what was natural to us is all these things that you do to actually make a long and fruitful life. We want to have a Survivor Guide, a plan, but I'd like to use it 40 years from now and not 4 months from now. So we think these keys with the natural tie, and we laid out these 12 key areas to a high quality life, a long and fruitful existence that we laid out and started to define those areas. And so each month we publish one of these keys, and that kind of repeats every year through the same 12-month cycle.
So it starts with plan your year. It ends with assess your year. And then in the middle, there are things that we think are critical, including get better sleep, enjoy healthy eating, stay fit and grow stronger, learn more, improve productivity.
Yeah, we kind of walk up this ladder of progression. Again, started with the planning, but then it's kind of your body, right? Sleep, eating well, fitness, and then from there you say, okay, now learning more, productivity, and the kind of the growth and contribution aspects of it. And then we get into some emotional resilience, positively engaging others and the relationships. And then in the last part of the year, we get into the managing risk types, avoiding addiction, preventing disease and illness, and ultimate contingency planning, the peace of mind that comes with contingency planning and reducing risk. So it's kind of that evolution, kind of using a little bit of Maslow's hierarchy to kind of walk yourself up the progression of things you need to do for a quality life.
Have you ever thought about writing a online course, and putting this together?
Yes. In fact, each key is really, it has clear objectives in each of those key areas. Yeah. And then it lists information that's critical to know. And we spend time trying to present that information in a kind of different perspective to give people a different insight. And then we list best practices. And, neither one of us considers ourselves experts in any one of these areas. But again, after 11 combined decades of being practitioners, we've been students of this our whole lives. And as we compared notes, we realized, boy, as you collect all these things, we list those best practices for any, whether it be learn more. We list all those almost 30 best practices that people should consider, so that as you look at this, you can take a look and say, here's ideas for me if I wanted to learn more, here's things that are out there that allow me to kind of take that next step. So that's the kind of guides we provide. And of course, that lends itself nicely to the next evolution of course, online courses and whatnot in these particular areas to progress people's thinking and opportunities for them to make improvements in each of these areas.
Mm-hmm.
So people can access this from your website, right?
Yes.
So why don't you just give us that website address, and we'll of course have it in your full page write-up, but give it to us on right here if you can.
All right, it's www.livingbetterinthelateryears.com.
And they can download the worksheet you're talking about, or is that something that you charge for, or?
What we want email subscribers, and if you're an email subscriber, you get the 12 keys free at the beginning of every month. You get weekly articles that Robert puts out that are, so for example, in month 1, the key is plan your year, and there'll be weekly articles that pertain to planning your year, and it's not redundant content. It is pulling out bits, creating examples, telling stories that bring to life the content in the key.
So it sounds like it might really be helpful for any age.
Yeah, because, well, one of our mantras is living better in the later years requires behaving differently in the early years. And in fact, one of Robert's most avid subscribers is my niece, who turned 12 yesterday, and turned 12 2 days ago. And she doesn't read much in terms of email, but every Friday she reads in its entirety what he's sent out. So I don't know how you get a better example than that.
12.
12. And she's now making suggestions for additional content for him.
That's great.
It's great that it's interesting, the different audiences, obviously from 80 years old all the way down to 12. But we also find that one of the audiences and this is rewarding for me particularly, is one of the audiences we get a lot of interest from is young naval officers, men and women who are serving the country in difficult deployments and in demanding scenarios, in an environment, demanding lifestyles that can wear you down. Our second key is
Sleep well.
Sleep well. Thank you very much. And in being deployed on a submarine out at sea, sleeping is tough to come by. But knowing what I know now, I had to double down on my efforts to sleep better and more soundly when I was out there. It's always going to be hard because the military just demands a lot. But I'd have been even more conscious of that, and my behaviors would have been better, and I'd be healthier now had I done that. So again, it's rewarding to see young naval people and young military people kind of absorbing this and hopefully tweaking their behaviors a little bit, such that it contributes to a long and fruitful life.
One other thing we think is fun is we have a recurring topic of safety moments, and this comes from the nuclear industry. It's the way you start every conversation is with a safety moment, and before you take any action, you have a safety moment. But what's fun is kids just eat this stuff up. So we'll head out for a walk and say, okay, let's have a safety moment about going for a walk. And the kids brainstorm all these great ideas, and sometimes their parents are less enthusiastic.
But it's interesting as you take some of these concepts and you feed them to young people. It's amazing how they wrap their heads around it. One of our favorites in the nuclear industry is called the ladder of accountability, which is just this, and it's kind of a tool that's a visual ladder, if you will, and it starts from a victim on the bottom rung up to awareness, to blaming others, and then moving through more empowered behaviors where you own it and you start to take action. And we shared this with a group of children at the holidays one year, and talking through this, and the whole holiday, as the family conversations would continue, these kids would call out, well, that's rung 3 of the ladder of accountability, and this is rung 7. So it was, you can just tell their minds were shaped around this victim versus empowered behavior. And of course, if you're going to make changes for a long and fruitful life, it's all about taking charge of your life and changing small behaviors that make huge contributions to what you're trying to achieve.
Well, I would think that that might be really helpful, almost as a standalone thing, because you really are working with a lot of different ages. And you think about the bullying and those kinds of things that goes on in schools today. And so it seems like the accountability piece of that could be really good in a variety of ways.
Yeah, we have the one key on emotional resilience, and then constructively engaging others. There's two different keys, and it really goes to building that emotional strength in the first one, and all the best practices, ideas from around the world about how to do that. And then, with that resilience, then how do you engage others to your benefit, and to get the and benefit of others, obviously, to help build a complete and comprehensive life.
Well, let's talk about aging a little bit. You're in an unusual field. Are you seeing the same kinds of age discrimination that people are experiencing in some of the other areas? And I'm thinking, Christine, particularly you, where you're working in HR, should have an answer for that. Those things could lead to feeling insignificant as we age. But tell me what it's been like for you.
So interestingly, my entire HR career has been in industries that have this age bubble. And so, there's always been key awareness of the median age of workers in the nuclear industry, and I was in oil and gas before, and a high focus on what are you going to do when all these people start to retire. When I had to do some incredibly challenging hiring for the UAE's nuclear program, the first place I went was retirees or semi-retirees who were ideally either bored, maybe retirement wasn't completely going as they wanted, or that they wanted to do something compelling. For example, industry long-timers who never got to build something could come over to the other side of the world and actually build something. Everyone said I was crazy, that no one from no retiree from the US was going to want to pick up and move to the United Arab Emirates and take up another career. But I would give anyone guidance if they were in human resources fighting a challenging staffing situation to the first place I would go is pools of retirees or semi-retirees or people nearing retirement who, and there are many flexible arrangements. So maybe it's full-time on the ground, maybe it's part-time remotely, maybe there's some travel on a rotational schedule, but I would certainly encourage the HR professionals to think creatively that way. And that's my go-to move anytime I'm in a tough hiring situation. But certainly what you see is that people are motivated by making a difference. Just universally, study after study shows that to be the case, that people want what they do to be important, and they want to have a positive impact and leave some kind of positive legacy. And so the degree to which you can create that for people and give them some flexibility where they can maybe enjoy the parts of retirement that they've been enjoying, but have some work that could give them something to do, a little extra income and a sense of purpose.
And people are living so much longer today. It isn't unusual to find people in their 80s or 90s, even the high 90s. So, and still viable and still saying, well, okay, what's next?
Yeah, Nan, when I was a kid, it was the classic, what you heard from the adults was, you work 30 years, you take a vacation to Hawaii, and then you do nothing until you're dead, till you die.
You sit.
Yeah. But now, and then as life evolved, people are like, well, I'm going to retire earlier. I'm going to retire instead of 65, I'm going to retire 60 or 55 or whatever. Then you start thinking, looking at the average age of people now, they're getting to, like you said, 80, 90, 100 years old is not unusual. That is an incredibly long time frame to think about playing golf, fishing, or twiddling your thumbs. It's kind of mind numbing. So I think it's a challenge. I think there's opportunity for people of all ages, but the key is maintaining yourself physically and mentally vibrant, willing to learn more, and to continue to find those opportunities to make a contribution. And it doesn't have to be kind of a fifth gear career. You can downshift into 40 hours or part-time or whatever, but making a contribution. Something that allows you to engage, keeps you on top of your game, and to be like a Warren Buffett. 90 plus years old, he's still reading 500 pages a day, and he's vibrant and contributing. That makes life fascinating. That makes life. I think I'm a big fan of the human body. The human mind responds to challenges it sees. And if you take away the challenge and you're going to sit in the back porch and watch the skyline, which is fine, but your brain, your body are going to start to shut down. And so that ability to shoot for a long, fruitful life where you are vibrant, resilient, passionate, and making a contribution, to me is, filling 30 or 40 years with something that is a high quality life.
So the other side of that coin is we have to really advocate for companies to give opportunities for people who are feeling like that, who feel like, I'm not old yet, I don't want to just sit.
Exactly.
So how do they find out kind of what's out there?
People or companies? People?
People that are looking to say, I want to do something, but where do I look?
Well, certainly, job boards, LinkedIn, honestly, LinkedIn is interesting, not just the networking part, but following companies or industries that are of interest and reading some of the dialogue that's around them. We've gotten some good ideas that way. Search firms, of course, can be really helpful. And there are a variety of online things like Freelancer, a variety of ways that you can create a profile and have access to freelance work. So those are a handful of ideas.
Yeah, and I'll give you two specific examples of that I think are kind of compelling. And I think as you start looking at these opportunities, all kinds of things come up in a wide range. And two that just pop into my head real quickly is we both work on learning other languages, and one of these things, there's websites out there that, as you and the name escapes me of the one, but where these English teachers or Spanish teachers or language, they have sessions where you can sign on for $30, $40 an hour, and you'll practice your language back and forth. And so those are people engaged with that have these language skills that are training people online, where you get the engagement, you get to have some fun back and forth, and you're making a contribution to someone's language learning, and you're making income at the same time.
And maybe you even find out more about their culture.
Oh, exactly. Sure. In fact, a good friend of ours was going to Germany, and his thing was he wanted to go over there, find himself a pub and have a conversation in German with the clientele and the pub. And he got on and started having these conversations and worked through his German education and started having these dialogues, get himself ready. The other example I would give is that we have cats. The pets are our choice, but here's an unusual thing that we stumbled into a service while we did a lot of our traveling called trusted house sitters. And maybe talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. These are people who are either choosing a nomadic lifestyle, so they have no residence and spend their time trying to fill their time house and pet sitting for others. That's one demographic, and the other one is people who have the flexibility to travel, want to travel, and it's like it's like doing an Airbnb or vacation rental, but it doesn't cost you anything. So the exchange is you, as a homeowner, you open your house and let someone stay in your place. And as a service provider, they are, staying in your place, taking care of your place, taking care of your pets, and enjoying different scenery and learning about a new destination.
I think that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
It's
So,
very interesting.
so just recently, we had a wonderful retired couple from Cincinnati, Ohio. We were often in Cairo working, and they came and stayed at our nice little condo here in Napa, California, not a terrible part of the country. And their responsibility was to watch one cat. And the rest of their time was, a wonderful lifestyle. They got to, travel around Napa. And it was, besides traveling out here, it was no cost. So, that's just an example of, that's something you can do in retirement that adds tremendous quality to your life. And you provide a service and doesn't cost you anything.
An important service.
Important service.
So
I think
And other than maybe potential medical care as people get older, that might be an issue, but you're seeing more and more people that just want to get up and go and say, hey, I don't have the same strings attached.
right.
I'm seeing now that there are a number of cruise ships that are starting to offer that you can, in essence, buy one of their units.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, yeah.
keep going from one place to another. I think I like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's that mindset too. I mean, I think, I referred earlier to, 65, and then you stop doing everything, and then you just wait until it's over. I think people are starting to adopt a different mindset and getting smarter about your sleep, what you're eating, what you're learning. I think people are starting to feed themselves and becoming actually more and more healthy, smarter about lifestyle, and starting to be able to change your behaviors a bit to actually take advantage of those later years in both contribution and in enjoyment.
I'm really doing a lot of research and discussion on the word significant and significance, which I think is really important for the older community.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think? What do you feel that people over 60 are seeking in trying to find their significance or their meaning or their purpose or their things that will make them feel important still in life?
Good.
Yeah. So I think that ability to make a contribution is just integral to a successful, thriving human being. You've got to be kind of paying it back or paying it forward, however you want to look at it. So I do think that drives a person in that career transition. If, let's say, somebody's had a career of 30 years in a particular job in industry, when you make that shift to a different job, maybe you're going to downshift to a fourth or third gear and do something a little less. Sometimes that what you're going to do may feel different. And I'll give you an example. After our stint in the United Arab Emirates, running these big nuclear companies, very demanding, lots of people, a lot of leadership opportunity, lots of insights and challenges, and everything goes with that. After that time frame, I spent 18 months writing a guide for operational readiness for new nuclear plants. Not that that's that significant to most people listening, but what was hard for me was it was interesting and different work to be writing something that where I didn't have people knocking on my door all day long, and everybody needs your attention. And it was just a different leadership dynamic. It was a different mental dynamic. I had to adopt my mental and emotional kind of profile to be able to do this task, which was unusual for me in my career, to spend that time investing in it.
But you felt significant when you completed it, right?
Exactly. But as you're going through, I mean, you're an author yourself, right? As you're writing something, you got to get to the end, then you got to get it out there and promote it. So there's a bit of, especially for me, I was used to being relevant and important every day of the week. And when you're writing this book, you're 2-3 months in, you realize you got 6 months more to go, and say, but nobody needs me today, right? So there's a different dynamic that goes on there that I think that people, as you're going to make those career shifts, because it's unless you're Joe Biden, you're at 80 something years old, it's hard to hold that kind of position every day. Though the kind of job you'll have over time will change, and the energy demands will be different, and the kind of the nature of the work will be different, potentially. So I think you need to be flexible.
And if I can, I would give a very different example. After 15 years of living and working overseas in a high-rise apartment, I'm really loving keeping my house clean and cooking interesting food for the people who I care about. And it's not what you'd call a big corporate job at all, but everybody needs to eat, and to be able to eat something good, I think, is really important. So I'm sort of looking to different directions that and finding great joy and a sense of significance in the work of being a homemaker.
So looking at kind of where you are now, what do you feel you really want most out of life?
I would say so it's for me, having positive contribution to something on a daily basis feels really gratifying. And there are a broad spectrum of what those things are for me. But I think the fundamentals, getting good sleep, and being really conscious of what you eat, getting consistent exercise in ways that are beneficial to your body, that don't tear it apart, and having victories along the way that make waking up every day be something I look forward to, right?
That you want to jump out of bed for,
That's right.
Yeah.
Jumping out of bed, I've got a list of things to do that make me happy, and I feel like they have a purpose. Robert's answer is probably different than mine, but that's mine.
No, I agree. And it goes, again, I grew up in a simple neighborhood and a simple life and whatnot, but I feel very blessed in many ways. But the one thing my parents just crammed into our heads is you need to make a contribution. You need to earn your keep, if you will. And as you get older, that life does impact you as you get older, right? And every year you need new tricks to stay ahead of the curve. So if you're going to make a contribution, if you're going to be mentally and physically and emotionally engaged in something that makes the world a better place, you need to stay ahead of that curve. And, as we look at these 12 keys, it's like, if you can master these 12 keys, or in these best practices for each of those keys, little ideas where you can every year, I'm going to change that little behavior. I'm going to change that little behavior. I'm going to change that little behavior, and try to stay ahead of the curve, which as Father Time is working against you. Just this wonderful symbiosis that goes on there that I think is helpful.
Well, what would you say is the one thing that you're grateful for today?
I am grateful to have a house in Napa, California. And we moved here in the middle of COVID. It's a long, harrowing story, but the fact that we had this place and had a place to come to, and have been able to settle here and spend time with family, I'm extremely grateful for that.
I will be in Napa tomorrow. I am, seriously.
Really?
Yes, I'm attending a speaker's retreat there in Napa.
We will expect a knock on the door.
All right.
We will give you our address. But I'll add into that, just in the thankfulness mode. Again, I feel if my life ended tomorrow, I would not fear it. I would simply be thankful, because I've had more blessings in my life than anybody deserves. But one of the things that's come to me is, the relationship we've built and the conversation we have around these topics, right? We are constantly talking about, how does life get a little better? What do I do? What does she do? And there's this wonderful symbiotic relationship, constructive dialogue that goes on, not conflict in any way, shape, or form, just constantly supporting. How about this? How about that? That makes life fascinating, different, and interesting every day. So every day I can honestly say I love every day because I get a chance to have this wonderful relationship that and we're focused on the same things, building toward the
Sounds fabulous. And it's been so much fun to talk with both of you. You have so many great ideas, and I just really want people to listen to your ideas, start thinking about their 12 keys, think what can they do for their planning guide for that year that you talked about, plan it in the beginning, and then as you go through what happens. So thank you so much for all of your contributions. Is there any takeaway or anything else that you'd like to add?
Your people listening, just to reach out to our website at www.livingbetterinthelateryears.com and sign up for these keys. Again, they're absolutely free. One comes every month, and in a year, you get the same 12 things with updated information. But it's an opportunity to go through this checklist of best practices that will give you ideas of, again, how to stay ahead of the curve, how to stay ahead of Father Time, and make your life just a little bit better.
I think I did sign up for it, but check and be sure. If not, I want to be sure that I do.
Very good.
We will. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
and for
you.
Interesting questions.
And Nan will have a glass of wine ready for you when you knock on the door tomorrow here in Napa.
Okay. I got to look up my hotel first and see where the heck I'm going.
Well, seriously, if you need any tips or tricks, feel free to contact us.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.